Good morning, everybody. It's Robert back at you for a video update on the shop build. So now we're inside the shop and it's mostly finished. At least finished enough for me to move in. I'm not going to be able to panel the walls this year. We're too late into the fall for that because I want to use real boards. So today's project is we're getting the Chinese diesel heater mounted in the shop. It's going to be my primary source of heat in this shop. If you remember the previous video, last year I had the heater set up in the old bus shop. So, just been working on the mounting system. It's very similar to the mounting system I used in the bus. A piece of 2x4 screwed into the wall, and then a little bracket for the heater itself to sit on. The heater comes with a metal base plate for that. So what I'm working out now is I wanted the heater away from the wall, the back wall, so that the air intake, which is on that side, was far enough that I could get some mixing of the air. But of course my heater pipe is a little too short for that. So what I'm going to use is a piece of 3/4 copper pipe. That'll get me to the other side of the wall, and then I'll be able to mount the muffler outside, because you don't want to mount your muffler inside. There's a condensation drip hole. So I've just marked out where I want to cut the hole. It's going to be about 4 inches above the power outlet. And that power outlet, all it's going to be used for is the Chinese diesel heater power supply, which is a 30 amp, 12 volt switching power supply. So I'm just going to cut out the hole and make the part to go in it. So it's going to be a 6-inch square hole cut into the wall, and then on the outside I'll cut the hole there. I'll use the I'll get my reciprocating saw to cut through the wall, and then that'll be my air gap, and on the inside I'll have a piece of sheet metal plate going around the pipe as it goes out, and that'll be how I control how I keep the heat from affecting the walls. So join me. Alright guys, so I just grabbed one of the leftover scrap boards from the construction of the shop, and I'm cutting it 4 inches wide. The wall cavity's 3.5, but I want it to come into the shop about 1/2 inch, and that way when I put the sheathing in, it's not recessed too badly. I should just barely get enough of what I need out of this. It doesn't need to be perfect because it will be covered by the sheet metal piece. The bandsaw is the only tool in the shop right now, so this is the only tool I have to work with.
I'll cut something 4.5 from the scrap, just so my box stays fairly square. So just going to assemble it with some regular 1.5 screws. Nothing fancy or special here today. One little tip if you're driving screws in, run them backwards for a few seconds and dig a little channel out if you don't have a drill set up for pilot holes, and that'll stop it from splitting. See? No split. So I'll come back to you guys once I get this installed in the wall. Okay guys, so I got the box installed in the wall. And what I'm going to attempt to do, instead of using the reciprocating saw, I'm going to actually try drilling a lot of it out using my cordless drill with this, I believe it's a 3/8 bit. I'm not sure. Even if I can only get part of it done, at least give me a gauge for where I'm at on the outside, because that's what I am worried about, that I'm going to miss it if I try to cut it from the outside, and I don't think I got the room to really cut it on the inside. So hopefully this works. I'm not sure what kind of visibility you're going to get in here, guys, so... So I'm getting a bit done here, guys. I think once I get the bottom cut out, I could probably go get a chisel out of the old shop and kind of chisel the edges. This time I'm going to off. So I'll work at that, guys, and come back once I get the hole cut. Alright guys, so we're ready to install the exhaust pipe again. So I just made up a flange bracket to go through the wall. It's just a piece of sheet metal. And as I said, it's 3/4 copper pipe, and then the muffler. Note when you install these heaters, there's a little condensation drain right there on the end of the muffler. Make sure that's pointing downhill. So I'll stick this through the wall, connect it to the heater itself. All right, I'll be back in a second, guys. I got to do a bit of trimming. It seems I did not quite get that the way I wanted to. All right, guys, let's try that again. All right, guys, so that's now been installed. So you can see it just goes right through the wall, back up to the heater. I think I'm gonna get the cover plate put back on. So that's on. I believe I brought in the bracket. Yes, I did. So we'll get the air intake installed. So because of the way my orientation is, when this was in the bus, the exhaust went the same direction, but the heater was backwards. So that puts my air intake pretty close to the heater now, the exhaust. So I'm just going to use this existing bracket I already had from the original install to push the air intake way over here. And that keeps it quite a ways away from the exhaust of the heater. All right, guys, so I'm going to back you up here. As you can see, I just installed the power supply for the heater. If you're uncomfortable working with mains voltage, I do not recommend you tackle this project because that's a 30 amp power supply, but it plugs into mains voltage for this heater. So if you're very uncomfortable, find someone who can do it for you. So I'm going to mount the fuel tank now. It's going on the bottom of the sheet of plywood. Where am I at for? Can you guys see where I'm going to be at? All right. So the tank mounts with 3 screws. In my old setup, I had a couple pieces of plywood bolted to the wall. In this setup, I'm going to set it up right here. Kind of keep the diesel heater on this side of the wall. And I'm just going to be using some 3/4 inch number 12 screws, which is what I used originally. So as you can see, my tank's not exactly empty. All right, so it appears I'm going to have to get some of the scrap extra hose. So give me a minute here. I figured that would be the case. So I had some zip ties on the air hose that helped keep the fuel line away from the exhaust. For anybody curious, this is the stock green rubber fuel line. A lot of people say not to use it because it breaks down over time. So far, I've had pretty good success with it. I'm not saying that it's the best option, because it's most certainly not. But I also haven't had a negative experience to say anything about. So get that up, clamp on it, tuck it where it runs a little tighter against the thing. It's there. So now I'm going to mount the fuel pump before I cut the hose to length, so that way I know how much I'm going to want. So I'm just going to mount the fuel pump down here. And they say to put it on a 45. Let's use one of my fat screws. So having a little bit of the loop down at the bottom gives me a service loop if I need to do any maintenance or take anything apart. And this stuff just cuts pretty easily with a box cutter. Do I have a box cutter? Yes, I do. So I can just toss that. All right. So now onto the wiring. I am going to secure all these wires up. But for now, I just want to get the system running and seeing how it's going to perform. And I'm going to mount the controller off to the side a bit because I don't want it directly, well, I could mount it right there, I guess, and she won't get too hot. That saves me from figuring out a spot. So the controller's got its own little mount, and there's already a screw in said mount. So all right. So I think we're ready to plug in the system. And I'm just going to pause the video here, guys, because I do need to remember how to do the priming sequence, because I do have to prime this sucker quite a bit. So I'll pause here, and I'll be back in a second. All right, guys, so to prime it, it's hold up and down on this controller together. You can see the pump's kicked in and she's priming. So it's going to take a second for it to prime, so I'll get back to you when it's done. All right, guys, so pump's been primed, so let's fire her up. So in this heater, you hit the power button, hold it for 3 seconds. She fires up. Uh-oh. Shouldn't sound like that. Abort. All right, I gotta check to see what's going on. I think the casing must be touching the fan. All right, guys, so it just turned out that the fan was just rubbing on the case when I put the cover back together. So you can see on the controller, that's the glow plug light. That means it's attempting to fire. The fan's running. Your temperature sensor, and we're on heat setting 3. So give it a minute for the glow plug to warm up. And then she'll fire the fuel pump up. I don't know if you can hear the temperature, the sound difference, but she's starting to fire. So we can go in and check the burn chamber temperature. So as you can see, we're at 20 degrees in ambient, and this is starting to raise. So that's telling me we do have a fire. There is a burn happening. So you'll hear her ramping up. Once she kind of starts ramping up, the glow plug light goes out. So we're at 56 degrees on the burn chamber. So she's getting nice and toasty, 60 degrees. So I'd say she's been fired up successfully. And we're getting starting to get some nice warm air down through here. So there, heater's been installed, guys. I'm going to switch it over to Alpine mode as I'm going to be running it in that for this winter. So, hope it was helpful, guys. Catch you in the next one.